in 1968, 69, we were in Vietnam and playing for the American troops.
So was that when did you find out, like, the good news is you're in the band?
Yeah.
The bad news is we're going to Vietnam.
Play Vietnam.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles. And as much as I miss Australia, it's good to be back home and back at it. Getting ready to get back on the road in a couple of weeks, going to China for some shows. And I really missed touring. I really missed singing for people. And I miss my band and my crew and my road family. So I'm really looking forward to getting back out on the road. But I do miss Sydney, I'm not going to lie. There was something so magical about being there for 2 months. And it looks pretty likely that I'll go back again, maybe next year. Not 100%, but it's looking good. And one of the things that I'm also excited about being home is getting back to doing this show, Stories to Tell. So we're filming some more episodes that will be out shortly, but in the meantime, it's today's episode that I want to talk to you about. So this is one of those episodes that we did early on in the creation of this show, when we were still dabbling with the idea of doing some episodes on location. So if you saw the Katie Couric episode, you saw that was filmed in a house that Katie and her husband John were renting here in LA. If you saw the Matt Friend episode, that was filmed at a bar in Silver Lake, California called the Friend Bar, which made total sense. And this is the only other on-location episode we shot. And it's me and my dear pal, Rick Springfield. Yes, I can hear the screaming already through the phone. Rick Springfield and I did this chat at his house, his beautiful home in Malibu, California. It was after that, as much as we enjoyed doing that episode, it made sense to us that my house and my bar is the place for this show. So this will be the last, I think this will be the last on-location episode of Stories to Tell you're going to see, unless I do have an idea to do a series of them on the road in the fall, but I'll tell you about that if that becomes reality. Rick and I sat down kind of in the middle of a bunch of tour dates we were doing at the time. So this is a while back, maybe 6 months ago that we filmed this. Maybe last summer. So Rick and I have been friends for nearly 40 years. I was a huge fan of his. And then when I started, his career started before mine. And then when my hits started happening and my record started selling, I was playing a show in the Greek Theater in 1988, and he and his beautiful wife, Barbara, came to my show. And I got to meet him, and I was so excited because I was such a fan of Rick's. And that began this enduring, almost 4 decades long friendship. We are goofballs together. We laugh our asses off together. And we tour together. Every so often, we just say, let's go do some shows together. A few years ago, we did a co-headline tour where we each did a set. And then we maybe did a song or two together, I think. This last year and a half or so, whenever Rick and I do shows together, we do the whole show together. So we come out on stage together and we sit and we play guitars and sing each other's songs. And we just take turns. And it's so much fun. I think people really have a great time because you really get to see our sense of humor and you get to see the dynamic of our friendship in between the songs. And I love Rick. You'll see, I think our friendship is well on display in this episode of Stories to Tell. And you'll get to learn some things about Rick that you had no idea about prior to this. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I loved sitting down with my pal. This is Rick Springfield on this week's episode of Stories to Tell.
Hi, Dick.
Hello, Dick. How are you?
Dickie.
Ah,
cheers,
cheers.
buddy. We're drinking Moscow Mules.
It's got a kick to it.
Isn't that refreshing?
Yeah, that's great.
It's good, right? Cheers.
I like the little copper mugs.
What do you call them? They're copper...
Tumblers?
No, what are they called? Copper mugs.
Yeah.
The
you go.
technical term is copper mug.
Copper mugs. They're good, yeah.
So,
Does it keep it cold or something?
What?
Does it keep it cold?
Yeah.
Is that the point of it?
Yeah. I want to start, before we talk about anything, I want to start with a little manifestation story. Because, you and I are very fascinated with manifestation. We've talked about it.
It's very powerful stuff.
1981 is when Jesse's Girl came out, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'm in my senior year of high school. Jesse's Girl is #1. And you are on the cover of everything. And you're on General Hospital. And you are what they call the it boy. And I'm 17, turning 18. And I'm into Queen and Bowie. And
Me too, I was too.
yeah, of course. But I'm like, even at 17 or 18, I'm like, I can't deny the quality of Jesse's Girl. I'm like, this is a really well-written song. It's really great production. It's like, I begrudgingly liked it. Loved it, actually. But then when I kept seeing you, I was like, fuck this guy. He's just too handsome with your fucking dimples and shit. And he's on a soap opera. And I was like, what a lightweight. What a lightweight. And so I was like one of those, I joined that chorus, mostly of guys who were just insecure and jealous, who were like, that guy, he's like a one-hit wonder, And then, then I heard Love Is All Right Tonight, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good too. But I was like, fuck it. I just don't like this guy. And then 2 short years later, I'm now living in LA, and I hear Affair of the Heart on the radio, which is the first single from your album called Living in Oz. And I loved it. And I was like, I go to Tower Records and I bought the album. And back in those days, if you really liked an album, you would record it on a cassette so you could listen to it in your car, right? Remember those days? We'd have like wires.
You hear the needle put on the record.
Totally. And if it skipped, that was just part of the deal. And I wore out that whole album. We're talking Human Touch, Fair of the Heart, Allison, which is in my top 3 favorite songs of yours, and one of my favorite songs of all time. Souls is on that album. Me and Johnny. And I'm looking at the credits and I'm like, he wrote everything himself, and he's playing guitar, and he's doing all the background vocals with him and Richard Page. And I was like, I gotta give it up. And the album cover was annoying too, because you were like, I'm still handsome. I'm even more handsome than when you first saw me.
Cover.
And I became, in that moment, a bona fide Rick Springfield fan. And I came to see you in concert at the Universal Amphitheater. And I started telling everybody, like, fucking Rick Springfield is a badass. He's a great songwriter. His lyrics are amazing. And I became a full-on, unapologetic fan. Cut to, I don't know. Now, back in those days when we were younger, 3 or 4 years seemed like a long time.
Yeah, it did, I know.
But 3 or 4 years later, on my first tour, and I'm playing the Greek, and you and your wife, Barbara, came to my show, and we met backstage, and we immediately hit it off, and we've been friends ever since 1987. And when I think about now, not only just sitting here with you now, but especially when you and I are on stage together and we tour together all the time, the phones are already ringing. This show is so big, the phones are already ringing.
They're already. No, you can't talk to him right now. He's interviewing me. Sorry.
I'm right in the middle of a good story. Every single night, there's a moment when I look over at you and we're laughing or we're singing together, and I think about me driving in my car in LA, listening to Living in Oz and memorizing every word. And to me, that's like one of the greatest manifestation stories of all time. And so that's all a big lead up for me to ask you, Jesus Christ, man.
Hello. Hello. What? Yeah. My pool guy.
course it
Okay,
is.
it's all right now? Thanks, Casey. Oh, good. Okay. Let's continue, shall we?
So all of that big, long story build up is to my question, which is, what's your favorite song of mine?
I'm sorry, who are you? You look really familiar.
Tell me your, do you have a manifestation story like that where somebody you really, really admired showed up in your life and you either worked with them or became friends with them or something?
I've written to Paul McCartney several times, but he hasn't answered me.
That doesn't count, because we're both in that boat.
Yeah, Hank Marvin, actually. Hank was a guitar player, was the first guitar hero in England. And he looked like Buddy Holly, had the glasses, and he was the first guy with a Strat, a Fender Strat in Europe. Cliff Richard was a big, like Elvis type star in Europe. And I was living in Australia and also lived in England as a kid. So he was like the first guitar hero. And I used to cut out imitations of a red Fender Strat out of cardboard and put like a little bamboo thing on the neck, and I'd lip sync, his songs in the living room window.
You're how old here?
What's that?
You're how old here?
10, 11.
Okay.
10, 11, 12. When the window is open, the window's open till I think you start really focusing on your career, or you get married, or the window to music is wide open, and that's what sticks,
Yeah.
And this was instrumental music. It was just before the Beatles, and it was, you'd probably liken it to surf music, only it was a lot deeper. It was very musical, and they did movie themes, and it was just really badass.
So sort of
stuff.
like the Ventures.
Yeah. They were
kind of
Ventures, but his sound was incredible. I mean, Mark Knopfler, Jimmy Page, Ritchie Blackmore, Eric Clapton, they all say he was a guy that when we were kids, we said, if he can do it, I can do it,
Yeah.
Because everyone else was American, and we all assumed Americans were superheroes,
Right.
Hank got his first guitar, and the strings were like heavy gauge strings. He goes, wow, these Americans, they're so strong, they can bend, it was just that they were using lighter strings. But
Right.
we thought Americans, they had whiter teeth, they were better looking, they was tan, their women are awesome, and we thought Americans were, superheroes. I mean, there was something that maybe it's the meat they're eating, or they're eating lots of dairy or whatever, but
Right.
that was the thought. And so Hank was the first of our people that was a guitar hero, and he was, and he was amazing. I mean, I had photos everywhere, and until the Beatles came along, he was it for me. He was the one I focused on, and then I did
But wait a minute, so this is in the late 50s probably, right?
59, 60, 61. They continued after the Beatles, actually. They were still successful after the Beatles, playing instrumental music, which is
So how
pretty
did
wild.
you become aware of them? Like were they on TV or did you see them
Yeah, I
in
think so.
magazines?
The first single I ever bought was their song. It's called "The Savage," and I don't know how I knew it, because we used to, there wasn't a lot on the radio, but there was a Cliff had a movie out called The Young Ones, and I think that was.
Oh yeah. So did he really shine a light on them?
Oh,
Cliff?
totally. They were his backup band, and then they had hits, and
Right.
it was like,
Gotcha.
oh my God, how great are they? you
Right.
know? But he really was a great guitar player, and he's still an amazing guitar player. And I had dinner with him, and he lives in Perth, and a friend called John, who was John for
Johnny?
me and Johnny, right? We grew up together, and we were total Hank freaks. And I met John through the Shadows. I had a photo of the Shadows on my locker, and I opened it up, and John he was giving me shit at the time. He was picking on me, which the strange thing you did,
Right.
with a new kid.
Right.
And he saw the Shadows, and he goes, "Oh, you like them?" And that's how we became friends. And so I invited John out. I was in Perth, and Hank lives in Perth now. I invited John out, and we had dinner with Hank.
How long ago?
Probably 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was, within the recent history. And it was us sitting there and trying to keep our 14, 13-year-olds in the can so that we didn't go,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, it's Hank Marvin!" We're sitting there going, "Yeah, so Hank,
Well, but Hank is like going. I'm sitting with Rick Springfield, so he must have.
yeah, I mean, I'm not really his era. He was,
But he certainly knows that you're.
yeah, he knew who I was, but he thought I was a bit of a poser, actually, he thought, with the roses and shit
Oh.
like that, But it was just amazing because he's doing all the things you want to talk about. He's talking about how they recorded stuff, and I'm saying, yeah, there's this noise at the end of Living Doll, which was the first song Cliff Richard had hit, and it sounds like you're whacking on the tremolo. He said, no, well, that was a Gretsch that I borrowed for the session, and it didn't have a tremolo, so I was pressing on the tailpiece to make the strings go.
And you and John,
I'm like,
sitting there like,
I'm going, Hank, that's really interesting. But the 14-year-old's going, oh my God! It was pretty insane.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, so that's a good example. You manifested him at some point into your life.
I'm still trying to manifest Paul and John. Don't know how that's going to happen.
One is still possible.
Yeah. No, I met him a couple of times, but he liked my wife better.
I mean, don't we all?
Yeah. Just sad story. First time I thought he was waving at me, but he was waving at Linda Blair next to me, who I was dating at the time. I'm at this. I was at Equus, the Broadway play, and I was dating Linda at the time in the '70s. I lean out, and Paul McCartney's like right there with Linda.
Did you shit yourself?
And he waved like that, and I went, "Did you just wave at me?" And I look over, and Linda's right next to me, going, "Hi, Paul."
Did you meet him that night?
No, but I did. I met him backstage a couple of times at shows.
Oh, I know. You showed me the picture.
Yeah,
we've shared Beatle pictures.
Yeah. None of us will have a photo with John or George, unfortunately.
Yeah. I've told you the story that I was dying to meet
you're
Paul.
friends with Ringo. I'm acquaintances with Paul.
Yeah. Yeah. But Paul's Paul and Ringo's Ringo, and they're both amazing in their own ways. And I had a series of circumstances where I toured with Ringo and I became friendly with him, wrote songs with him. And I really love his company. He's fun. He's a great guy. He's just a sweetheart. And sometimes, once in a while, because I've spent enough time with him, sometimes I'm with him and I get reminded. Like he'll say something and I'll look at him like, God. Oh, that's right. You're the fucking Ringo from the Beatles. Not just...
It's hard to kind of, as everyone gets older, it's hard. You forget, when you're just like with them. It's not, if you met them when he was gone, boys, yeah,
Yeah.
But I guess as we get older, we understand aging is, part of the process. But
he, like
they're
you,
aging too.
He's considerably older than you, but you guys share something in common, which is you're not aging. I just had dinner with him, I don't know, in the last year. No, even a few months ago. I sang.
I haven't been to dinner with Ringo.
Dude, he asked me to sing. He got me and Richard Page to come over and sing on his EP.
Oh, really?
And he said, I've got a surprise for you. And I said, what's the surprise? He goes, the surprise is who you're singing with. And I thought, oh my God, is it Paul?
Paul's coming?
Yeah. But he knew that I loved Richard Page.
Oh, he loves Richard's voice.
And he loves Richard's voice.
No,
I got Richard that gig.
Yeah.
So I walk in and I hadn't seen Rich in a while. And he's standing there, and Rich and I got to do a session together on Ringo's record. Just the two of us singing all the background vocals on this song. It was so great.
Matt and Greg did a session with him too, Bissonette, and Matt saying, I play in this bass, and Ringo, I really like that bass. So he said, well, here. And he goes, okay, thanks.
Yeah, what's he gonna do with it?
Like people give him stuff all the time.
Exactly. My favorite Ringo moment, one of them, I've had many, but Daisy and I had been married for a couple of years, and she had never met him. And so he invited us to the house for dinner. And he has people who come and cook, and so he likes to stay home. And we've been out to dinner with him, but he said, come to the house and we'll have dinner with the chef. And so it's just the four of us. And we had this really fun hang. We sat and talked for a little bit, and then we were served dinner in his kitchen.
I'm so jealous.
It was amazing. And then, we were talking about TM. I was curious. I had just started to do TM, which is Transcendental Meditation for you kids at home. And he did it with he learned it from Maharishi.
While John and Paul wrote the White Album.
There you go. So I said, will you tell me about your history with TM? Oh yeah, and he's so generous with Beatles stories and his life stories, and and then we have dessert and coffee or tea, whatever. And there's that moment when it's like, okay. It's like at the end of a meal or at the end of an evening when it's like, that it's like, it's time. It's time to wrap it up. but you're at somebody's house and you don't want to be the first, but you don't want to overstay your. And I realized that moment was like hovering, and I wasn't sure
what the etiquette was to do it. Yeah.
And there was a pause of literally like maybe 4 seconds. And I'm going to do the impression of what Ringo broke the silence. We're sitting at the table. We'd had a lovely evening, and it's now like 10:10 p.m. And there's a 4-second pause, and he goes, "Should we call it a night then?" And I looked at him and I went,
Yep.
"Yes, we should."
Yep.
And Daisy said, when we got in the car, she said, "That was the most masterful wrapping up of an evening I've ever seen."
Should we call it a night?
Should we call it a night then? Speaking of that, tell me, I think we probably talked about this, but when you talk about worshiping Hank, and then you ended up meeting him and all that, so you're 10 years old. Do you remember when it clicked over for you that like, I'm gonna be in music?
I think I always imagined that when I watched myself in the window. We had it was always gloomy in England, and we had a big glass window that looked out onto our dead lawn. It was either covered in snow.
What part of England were you in?
Woking, actually. I used to ride my bike with my friends in the sand pit where the Martians landed in H.G. Wells' War of the World.
Holy shit.
If you've ever read War of the Worlds,
Yeah.
the Martians land in Woking.
And that's where you lived.
That's where I was living. And they
Fucking
land in the
hell.
sand pits, and that's where I used to ride my bike when I was a kid. We'd ride our bikes around the sand pits. I didn't know back then. And now I wonder, why didn't they have like statues everywhere of
Yeah,
these Martians?
should have been.
And now they do, but you know.
Yeah.
But so I was living in Woking. It's about 20 minutes outside London by train. And we were there for a few years. My dad was in the army, and so we had this, it would get dark early in England because it's always fucking gloomy.
Yeah.
And they don't have days like this over there. And I'd see myself, and I had my friends stand behind me, and I'd give them tennis rackets so they could be the other guys, right? And I'd be up front with my pretend paper, cardboard Fender, and we'd play the records, and I'd lip sync to the songs.
Elvis?
I did Elvis, yeah, but
Cliff Richard?
mainly the Shadows. I mean, I was so into the Shadows. I
Yeah.
into guitar playing. I wasn't into the singing thing back then. Although Richard was a big singer, but I was into the guitar thing. I mean, I've always loved guitars. As you see, I have them all over my house,
Yeah. Well, they're pieces of art.
Yeah, the total pieces of art.
But at what point did you go, I'm going to actually like...
I think it was always in my mind. It just became, once I started seeing myself in the window, it was a visual, I said, yeah, that's me.
So when you probably like everybody else, you formed a band or 2 or 10.
Yeah.
But when you started to go like, this is what I want to do, were your parents
Yeah,
encouraging?
there was a watershed moment where I had failed school. I'd been kicked out of 11th grade for not attending.
Because you just wanted to stay home and work and
Well, I was staying
play
home
music.
and playing guitar,
Yeah.
and reading horror stories, that I'd stolen from a secondhand bookstore. And my mom was saying, I don't know why, Richard, where does he get the money for all these books?
The impression of your mom is always epic.
That's
not singing, Richard.
not singing, is it, Richard? Yeah, my mom went to see a female singer that we won't mention, but she wasn't great. And my mom turned to me and said, that's not singing, is it, Richard?
What a review.
Oh my God. But so she knew I was still in these books. But I was reading and playing guitar. So I was probably getting a better education if I'd been at school.
Yeah.
And so I was asked not to come back to school. And so my parents said, well, the only way to do this is for you to complete school at a private school. We'll have to pay for it. You'll have to buy books and everything. And so we'd started the process, and I was depressed as hell because I hated school. All my life I've hated school. I never had a good experience. We were always a new kid every 2 years. My dad moved, being in the army, and I was always a new kid and getting picked on, and So I never enjoyed school, and the thought of going back to a school in the city, like in an office block, I was ready to.
Yeah.
So, in that moment, a guy showed up at my front door who'd been a very big star in Australia. I was in Australia at this point. And he'd been
Where
a big
in Australia?
In Melbourne.
Okay.
And I'm living in Melbourne, and this guy shows up and says, his name was Pete Watson. And he'd been in a band called MPD Limited that had been a Beatle type band, had a couple of really big hits. And my mom said, Pete Watts is sitting in the living room. And that's like them coming in saying, I don't know, Johnny Carson sitting in the living room. It was that weird to me. And so I went out and it was him, and he said, I saw you playing in a club and I wondered if you want to play guitar in my band. We play professionally and we get paid, because I wasn't getting paid at the point. So I went to my parents and I said, what should I do? And thank God, or not, depending on your opinion of me, they said, I said, what should I do? They said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to play guitar. They said, okay, go play guitar. Wow. So I got rid of my school books, I breathed a sigh of relief, and I joined Peace Band. And we went to Vietnam.
Oh, that's right. This I know. You got to tell me. You got to talk about it. You got to tell me about, you almost got killed, right?
Well, yeah. It was very hairy. We went in 1968, 69. We were in Vietnam, and playing for the American troops.
So when did you find out? Like, the good news is you're in the band.
Yeah.
The bad news is we're going to
play Vietnam. I know, but I was 17 and I hadn't read newspapers. I knew there was something going on, you know. But so we went over there, and it was unbelievable, dude. I was starving a lot of the time. One of the band members and I actually chased a cat, thinking we could kill it and eat it. We were so hungry.
Oh my God!
We got shot at, rocketed, mortared, just everything. We stayed in with the grunts in tents in fire bases. And it was very, very hairy. We went up on a mission with some guys, which you can't do now.
Did you shoot?
Yeah.
So
we stayed with some Navy guys in a place called outside Denanko Marble Mountain, and I was throwing mortars down the tube. They were getting attacked, and it was a fire base, and I was throwing mortars down the tube, and by the radio shack, and I saw a helicopter go down and see tracers going through the sky. It was unbelievable. And if we weren't high, I would have been out of my mind. But everyone was stoned.
Right.
That's all they could do. And we'd be staying in these rat-infested French villas that used to be beautiful, and now were just junk. And then they'd send us out to these, fire bases in trucks and in Huey helicopters, and we'd do a show and then sleep with the grunts.
So I'm just picturing, like, you're throwing mortars down the tube and you're dodging gunfire, and then that night you're like, everybody, come on, get out.
Come on, sing along now.
Sing along now.
Oh, look who it is.
Bindi.
Bebop.
Oh, look how fat she is.
I know, she can't hardly. She waddles. She doesn't walk. She waddles.
So if you get a chance, Jamieson, we'll cut in a shot of
Bindi,
because
do a shot of Bindi.
So Rick and Barbara came to our house when Brandon you were probably like 12 or 13,
mm-hmm.
and the family dog was Radar, a Cairn Terrier. Yeah. And Rick was playing a gig. And they came over to the house to hang out. I think we had dinner at the house when I was living in Chicago, and Radar was there, our family dog. And Radar was my favorite dog of all time. Like probably your Ron.
Yeah. And Gomer.
And we have I've had great dogs, but Radar just has a special place in my heart. And they both fell in love with Radar, and Radar with them. And I think it was less than a year later.
Yeah, we got Bindi.
I get a text from Rick with a picture of Bindi, and he's like, we fell so in love with Radar, we wanted to get one. We got a Radar. And she's the sweetest.
She's a beauty. She's Barbie's dog, but she tolerates me.
So you start your career sort of that in Vietnam, like in a fucking bizarre set of circumstances. Okay, so now flash forward, you come home from Nam.
The guy who hired me, Pete, dies from a disease he caught over there.
Oh my God.
And we all go running to the doctors to get x-rays on our chest because he had some lung disease and that he picked up over there. Because on the days off, we'd go off with different GIs, we'd go off to their tents and play music and get stoned, or we'd go up on a helicopter mission with them. This is before when you could do anything. I mean, you wouldn't let a civilian, stay in bunkers and shoot enemy and, now. But everything was legal back then. Everything was okay back then. And so he obviously went somewhere that we didn't and got something, Agent Orange or who knows what,
Yeah.
But he died, and then I formed a band with some of the other guys from the band, and it was the first press we got, which was a band called Wickety Whack. Great
Wickety
band.
Whack? This is pre-Zoot.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew about
when I first
Wickety
started
Whack.
getting press.
And you were singing and playing, or just
yeah,
playing?
singing and playing. I was one of there were two singers. I was one of them. And I started to see and then I joined Zoot when that band broke up, and I was just a guitar player in the Zoot, but I started writing in Zoot, which was really the most fun thing and important thing for me to do. And we used to get slammed as kind of a teen band, basically because they started wearing pink, and I joined the band and said, dude, we got to drop the pink thing. But it was already too late for the image, you know.
Yeah.
And I came over here, and then the bass player formed Little River Band.
Right.
And the singer went on to become a big TV star in Australia. So it was, you know, that to all the people who gave a shit, basically, for being, you know.
And then at some point you're juggling, you're acting, you're getting work as an actor, and you're also known in Australia as a solo artist. But you're sort of juggling, and you're not really, like, you had a burst of success in music in Australia for a minute, and then kind of it went away for quickly, right?
I was in Zoot, and then we broke up, and I had a single called "Speak to the Sky" that was a big hit in Australia.
Which we do in our show every once in a while. You mock it every time. Okay, now everybody, speak to the sky. We're gonna follow Jesse's Girl with "Speak to the Sky."
It's a song I wrote for my mom. She said, I was playing heavy stuff at the time in Zoot. I said, why don't you write a nice song, Richard? So I wrote a nice song for my mom called "Speak to the Sky." And it was actually in hymn books over here.
And it was a huge hit in Australia, right?
Yeah. It was a top 10 hit over here, but it was a 72, and it was when, you know, like, nobody remembers it. So
you had that burst of success.
Yeah,
and
then they tried to put me in all the teen magazines, and I wasn't writing teen music other than "Speak to the Sky."
Right.
So it just didn't work out, you know. And so I left my managers and went underground for a while. And, you know, the big driver was sitting in the Starwood when I was like 23, and some guy looking across and going, "You Rick Springfield?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You should have gone further, man." And I thought, at 23, I'm going, whoa, is that it? Am I like done? And it was a big driver for me because I hadn't gotten anywhere, you know, near where I felt I belonged or wanted or envisioned myself, you know.
How were you paying rent? How were you getting by?
Well, there was a little movie called The Exorcist.
Oh, right. I do know this.
And I tell you, Linda Blair was a goddess. She helped me survive. I had no money.
Oh my God, you were fucking classic cliche. You were the out of work guitar player musician crashing at your girlfriend's house. What's the joke?
No.
What do you call a guitar player who breaks up with his girlfriend? Homeless.
I wasn't quite homeless, but she was paying the rent for sure.
Yeah.
And she saved me, really. And I am thankful for her, and I support her dog charity now.
I know her a little bit,
Linda Blair
too.
World Heart.
Yep, she's awesome.
Yeah, and but yeah, she saved me, and so I was living with her for a few years, and then I started work as an actor, and it was a chance thing.
Did she help you get work?
No. I met the manager that was suing me for leaving him. His ex-wife, saw her on the street. She said, "Why don't you come to the acting class? What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." So I started going to the acting class, and I met Doug, who's still,
Doug Davidson.
Yeah. And I started working, which was unbelievable because most actors were waiting tables to get acting work, you know, and I went in there going, "Oh, work as an actor till I get a record deal," you know. It was total innocence.
But you had
no idea what I was doing.
Like, especially at that time. This was like late 70s?
Yeah, it was actually great because there were tons of shows. They were hiring, you know, it was like getting a record deal in the 70s.
You looked like Richard Hatch, and you looked at like those guys, those super handsome, chiseled, young sex symbol guys. Like, it was a no-brainer. Plus, you could act.
Yeah. Well, I got better. But it was, it paid the light bill, you know. I mean, I was a contract player with Universal. I was one of the last contract players where they paid you weekly, and you still had to audition for the gig and get it, but that was the most money I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
It was $500 a week, and I was like in heaven.
And when you were working as an actor, were you also at home writing songs.
Yeah.
Working on music.
That was still my focus.
Mm-hmm.
And I was I formed, a club band, and we'd play Cheap Trick and Cars and Zeppelin stuff and in a restaurant,
Right.
And then I was still writing, and then just after that I got a deal with RCA, and that's when things really started.
But wait, so was the RCA deal prior to you joining General Hospital or vice versa?
It was first. It came first.
Oh.
RCA deal.
See, I got that all wrong. I thought you had started doing General Hospital, and then you got another record deal, and then Jesse's Girl came out, and it was like the world just exploded.
No, it was I got the record deal because the guy, Ed DeJoy, his name was, and RCA, they had nobody. They had Elvis. That was all they had at the time.
I mean,
right? And
they did have Elvis.
Yeah. And he'd liked an album I did called Comic Book Heroes, which did the worst of any of my albums ever. No one got, only got a good review in Rolling Stone. That's the only thing, but nobody bought it. And it was total misjudgment. Everyone thought it was teen music, and it wasn't. But he liked that album, and that was, like 8 years ago from when I met him. And he said, I'll give you a shot. I like that album. So I went home and wrote songs, and I had different, I had a ballad, and I had a campy kind of banjo thing, and I had a rock thing, and I played them for him. He said, well, there's 3 different things here. What do you want to do? I said, I want to play, rock and roll. Rock and roll, mate.
Rock and roll, mate.
Rock and roll. So I went home and wrote Working Class Dog, and so they recorded that. We recorded that, and they were delaying putting it out because it was Barry Manilow and the Bee Gees and ballads and disco. And they're going, what do we do with a guitar-oriented pop rock record? Nobody playing it on the radio. So they kept holding it, I said, oh, fuck, this is going to happen again. Nothing's going to happen. So I went up on this thing for General Hospital, and it wasn't anything I was interested in. I thought a bunch of old ladies watching an afternoon show.
Just a gig.
No reflection on my music. I'll take it. They offered me, again, $500, must have been the magic number, $500 a show.
Oh, wow.
Which was, if I did 2 shows with $1,000, I was like, fuck, really? It was more, honestly, I said, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And then I started doing the show, and then RCA just said, well, fuck it. They didn't know I was on the show. They just said, oh, we'll release a record. And then started getting played, and then Gloria Monty, the producer of General Hospital, sidled up to me like after 6 weeks I've been on the show. I said, I hear you're also a singer. I said, yeah, I'm not singing on the show.
Right, because you wanted to keep it separate.
Yeah, but it's still screwed with the record for sure. Keith Olsen, who produced Jesse's Girl, said, it's a double-edged sword. If you take this, you don't need it. The record's a good record, but if you take it, you'll get a lot of press, but it'll be a double-edged sword, and it was. Rock radio started playing Jesse's Girl. Then when I found out I was on a soap opera, they thought I was just an actor geek, and someone said, hey, you can sing this song. And, so they dropped it, and eventually it made it. But, it was a long journey for that song because it got a lot of pickup, and then because it was released, because it got radio, phones, which they don't do now because everything's on,
Yeah.
But
back
people
in those days, it was
up.
really organic. It was really like if the phones don't light up, it's not a hit.
Yeah, and it wasn't released as a single. The DJs started playing it because they liked the song.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Was there a different single?
Yeah, they put out I've Done Everything for You first.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and nothing really happened. And I said, there it goes. And then the radio started picking up on Jesse's Girl. And they called up the station, the label, and said, we're getting a lot of phones on this song. You might want to put it out as a single. And RCA is going, duh, okay.
It's a total accident.
Yeah.
Wow. So that song became a massive hit despite the record company.
Despite the record company.
Because of the record
thanks to
company.
the DJs and thanks to the public who picked up on it, And thanks to the fact that there were phones and that they paid attention. I mean, General Hospital was big on that. They were huge. They'd pay big attention to phones.
Yeah.
I remember walking when Demi Moore was on the show. I remember walking by a secretary and she's going, oh, you don't like her voice, and writing it down. Right? I'm going,
oh, wow.
That proved to be wrong.
But this is also when MTV's starting, right? So now you're on General Hospital and you're getting video play for Jesse's Girl.
Yeah.
That was the ticket, man. It was like the minute your face was everywhere, that's what made people a star.
Yeah. It was all serendipitous. You know, you couldn't have planned it.
Wow.
I mean, I thought Jesse's Girl was a show for all women, and it happened to be the big college show and become the biggest show that summer on TV, a daytime show.
And that was a time I never watched soaps, but that was the Luke and Laura and
the Ice Princess and all that horse shit.
it was a phenomenon.
No, it was. It was, and I was lucky to be on the show at the time. It just happened to, it was just, again, serendipitous but, you know, manifesting, you know, it really what it was, and never giving up, which is.
I also know from our conversations, and I also think I've seen you talk about it in interviews back in the day. I have this weird recollection, because like I said, I was a fan at this point, and so I would catch you on different interviews or on TV shows. Like, you know, they had like magazine shows, they used to call them, where they would do these pieces, these entertainment pieces on a celebrity and I remember seeing at the height of Jesse's Girl and General Hospital, I saw this piece on you, I still remember it. And it was basically you describing, and they were showing, you would film General Hospital, crazy hours, memorizing dialogue, being in scenes all week long. And then Friday, you would fly out and do a weekend of gigs and be back on
Monday
set
morning,
for Monday morning.
Yeah.
And you did it week after week after week for like a year or more, right?
I remember driving a car to the studio one morning at like 7 a.m. from the airport after gigs and going, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I was really tired, and because when planes were flying at all hours, you know, so you could catch a plane at 2 a.m. and get into LA at 5, and then, you know, I'd memorize the lines on the way in, and it was, but I was up for it because I was, you know, I'd wanted it for a long time.
Yeah.
I had the energy for it, and I said, it's not gonna stop because I said, nah, I'm too tired.
Right.
You know?
Well, the answer is you pulled it off because that's what you had to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was, you know, that's a kind of a work ethic you don't see that
it's
much
exactly
anymore,
what it is.
right? Where you go, hey, this is what I signed up for, and I'm not gonna fold. Like this is, I'm realizing all my dreams at once, and it's really hard work.
I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
I remember flying back from Europe one time, and they were saying, oh, you gotta go to Sweden. You just gotta go to Sweden. This will make it in Sweden. And it was the only time I said, oh, I can't, man. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. But it didn't really make any difference, you know. But when my dad died, I remember I came home from the service, flew back to America, and I had a gig already in Florida, a radio gig. And I'm flying in, and I'm curled up on the floor of the plane, my stomach in knots, not having slept for like 40 hours and just in a wreck. But going on, because I knew my dad would want that, you know.
He would expect you to like show up.
He would say, don't bug out. You know, get on with your life.
Yeah.
And
it's funny, you know, you and I have that thing about our dads in common and losing them somewhat young.
Yeah.
And my dad, similarly, my dad was a car accident, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. He
that.
didn't die in the accident, but he died a few weeks later.
Oh.
But initially, as bad as he was hurt in the accident, I was in Japan on tour. I was in Tokyo.
What year was that?
97.
97?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was 73, I was 33. And I was on tour in Japan. And I was in the middle of the night. I get the phone call. And I get a phone number. He's been in an accident. I get the phone number of the trauma center where he's being airlifted. I don't know anything. I don't know how bad it is or whatever. I get a doctor on the phone who's going to treat him. And they're about to wheel my dad into surgery. And my dad says, let me talk to him. And he's on a gurney. And he's just been in a horrific car accident where he's like, half his body was like broken. And the first thing he says to me is, I know, I've always got to be the center of attention. That was the first thing he said to me. And the second thing he said to me was, don't cancel the gig. This is not life or death. I'm pretty banged up, but don't come home. If you need to, you can, but don't do anything. Don't cancel your gig.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I was so reassured because he sounded fine. He
Yeah.
actually sounded okay.
He wanted you to know that. Yeah, that was, I mean, my dad said that, you know, through other means, but I got the message for
Yeah.
sure. And he always was like that too. He'd go on and, you know, I mean, he's a guy that went through the war, you know,
Yeah.
Second World War. And that's a real shit. That's what he died from. They figured in the end,
Really?
the stress from that and yeah.
Well, let's stay in this vibe just for a second because I think it's really an important conversation to have. So you wrote this, I think, a really great memoir a few years back, where you were very honest and revealing and
Brutally, they
brutally. Among the many things you talked about very openly was your history with depression. I know you've talked about it a lot in the press and we've talked about it privately a lot about how it's good to talk about it for people who there's a lot of I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about
Yeah.
it and it's so much
They
more
see it as
common than
weakness.
people think, you know. And you've chronicled your path with it, even like when you were a teenager, you had a failed suicide attempt, and we've talked about this. I have a history with it myself, but I wonder now, so we haven't talked about this in a while. So I thought, wow, the cameras are rolling.
Let's bring up something really dark.
How do you like, it's almost like being an alcoholic where you were always an alcoholic. Like you're in treatment or you're in recovery, but you know that you always have the ability to fall back, right? I view depression that way, where I feel like right now and for several years now, I don't have it. But I never feel like I've conquered it.
No, it's always lurking.
So how is it for you like now? Because it seems like you're really in a great place in your life.
Yeah, I'm a much better place now than I certainly have been. And I think
Is it because of me?
What's that?
Is it because you're working with me?
Pretty much, yeah.
what I
I
thought.
mean, it's the manifestation thing,
what I
you know.
thought.
I said the way to happiness is through Richard. And I said, I just see this name in my head, Two Dicks. And
That's the key to happiness.
That's the key to happiness.
Not
Two
one,
dicks.
two.
In one night.
Two
Gotta try
dicks, one place, one night. Seriously, like you were saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I can't help myself.
no, I mean, I feel better lately. I've been meditating a lot, which has helped.
Do you know what your triggers are? Or do they change?
It varies, you know. I do know what they can be. It's certainly like, we all compare ourselves to others, you know. That's always been a big one with me.
What's the great quote? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, exactly right. And I do understand that, and it's taken me a long time I'd always, you know, all my life I've done that, and it's to my detriment, but also it's spurred me on to a degree too. You know, there's always yin yang in everything you do. But I would say that's probably one of the big ones. And also, you know, I feel good in my family life, which really helps. That hasn't always been the case, and I've been, you know, pretty bad at times, and reap the rewards of that.
Yeah.
I think my wife and I are in a great place together. You know, we've been together for 40 years, and if it's not working now, it ain't gonna work, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know when it started to go away, but it has started to go. I'm playing more live, which I really love.
I was going to ask, do you find that there's a connection
Absolutely.
with being dark, when you're home for too long versus...
Yeah, and not doing anything constructive. Like I'll walk by the studio if I haven't been in there in a while, and I'll like treat it like a spurned lover, you know, like I should be in there, but I'm not, you know. Or I always like to write. I love, like you said, you love to write. Writing is kind of our center, and so if I'm doing that, it really keeps me happy, you know. I guess I've been constructive and productive in what I'm doing, even if nothing comes from it. You know, like I just you put albums out, and there's no radio play
Right.
anymore, but I love to do it. I love to write. I love to record. I love to put stuff out.
Yeah.
I love to play new music on stage. And if something takes off, then great. I always think there's an opening somewhere. If the song's great enough, or there's some kind of opening. And it's funny because I heard Ringo say that on some interview. He said that, you never know. That could be that one song. And I think we all kind of feel that.
And similarly, to not just writing, but like, you look at somebody like Ringo, who's 83 now, I guess, and he's doing another tour.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting not too long ago, and the subject came up about retiring and whatever. And I said, I feel like I kind of know the answer to this, but like, when you've done what you've done, when you've accomplished what you've accomplished, what really is the motivation to go back and do another tour? And you know what he said? I just like to go play me drums.
Yeah.
I just want to go play.
It's Occam's
It's fun.
razor. It's Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually the truth.
Yeah.
And I mean, whatever, you and I have achieved, it's in the past. I mean, I was never the guy that put, platinum records or anything on the wall.
Oh, I totally do that.
What's that?
I've got them all over my house.
I know, but that's great. But that's not, for me, it's always almost like, but that's them, and it's part of my depression. That is, like I don't ever feel I'm good enough. And so I go, but, that's, everyone will look at that and go, ooh, you think you're so great, so I'll put it away. But,
that's really, okay, we're going to do a little therapy now. Because when you say that, I get it. But,
mule therapy.
Yeah, Moscow mule therapy. Though said, then I have a question. Because one of the things that I think you and I, one of the things that we share is that we're very committed to health and fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, and I heard platinum records are very radioactive. So
if that's my one downfall, I'll take it. By the way, I was like that, by the way. I'm kidding, but they were all, my sons here, you can attest to this, they were all, for years and years and years, in boxes in storage.
Mm-hmm.
And when I married Daisy, one night she goes, you must have amassed a bunch of plaques, and right? Where are they? And I said, they're in boxes in storage. And she goes, why? I said, whatever. She goes, no. That shit's going up on the wall, man. Like, that's you earned those.
Yeah,
that's your life.
No, I do get that.
And I really kind of found a joy in it through her, because she's like, you should be really proud of that. That's like, and so now I just sort of like, I joke about it. Like a friend of mine, when I turned 60, I'm digressing here, but you'll appreciate this. He sent me a video message because he wanted to just wish me happy birthday. And he's like, it's a big birthday, you're 60, you sent me a really nice message too. And he said, I just want, and he's being very earnest. And he said to me in the video, he's like, Richard, you're a very lucky man because you've got a family who loves you and you've got a good life. And, you can have platinum albums on the wall, but you can, like, that shit doesn't matter. And it's what, and he's given me that sort of like, you're a lucky man for all the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent him a video back. And I said, man, thank you so much. And I said, and as I'm talking, I'm walking. And I said, it was such a heartfelt thing you said to me. And I walked into, we have a powder room that is wallpapered with platinum albums. Yes, a bunch of mine, but a lot of the ones that I wrote, I wrote songs for people and produced. And as I'm talking to him, I'm saying, yeah, man. And like, you're right. That shit doesn't matter. And and right behind me, it's just plaque after plaque after plaque. But my question is, when you say, I don't want people to look at that and go, oh, who does he think he is? But I think there's a connection. Yes, we want to live as long as we can, as long as we're healthy and fit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be the first to tell you, for me, it's fucking vanity. I want to look great. I want people to think I look great because guess what? We're on stage in front of people.
Yeah.
I don't want people to go, oh, wow, he really let himself go, wow. Or,
no, I agree with that.
I'm motivated by
it's been a drive.
Look at you.
Being in front of the camera is a driver, absolutely, for sure. And I've been in front of the camera since I was, 19. I've been,
But I think that there's an interesting connection between you doing the work to look as great as you do, especially at your fucking old age.
I know my engineer at the studio, in my studio, they said, "You're pretty spry for your age."
Dude,
And spry
it's
means
so
an
inspiring.
old dude
It
who,
is.
acts young.
But you do. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. But guess what I'm saying, and I'm hammering the point. The guy who's like, I don't want to put platinum albums up, and you've sold millions and millions of records. You don't want that attention, but you're okay to fucking take your shirt off on stage.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, don't look over there. Look here.
So I think we should probably ask your shrink for the answer for this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the staying healthy, it's part of staying healthy, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the taking the shirt off thing is just kind of a fun thing, but if it inspires,
Not fun for most people.
But if it inspires,
Fun for you.
I've heard guys come up and go, "Man, you got me starting to think about that."
I've told you this. I've got work to do, but I'm in the best shape of my life at 60 because I was touring with you and I was like, fuck.
Oh, okay.
I gotta step this shit up. Like, I can't have this, whatever this was, floating around. And it's gone now because of him. Because I was like, I'm not gonna be on stage next to this. He's taller than me as to begin with. And then it's like, I'm not gonna look like his frumpy little brother.
You never looked like that. You had a lot of baby fat at one stage.
I did.
But I had baby fat, which is, I don't know if they're on the same side of the coin, the album, with the albums and the physical thing. The physical thing is more driven by, I want to feel good, I don't want to have to go, oh, God, that hurts, but it will eventually, and it does at times, and
You work out every day?
Huh?
Do you work out every day?
No, I work out every other day now. I've started to, because my shoulder, you start to get shoulder pain and stuff. And we have a great doctor that, I do tests all the time.
We text each other all the time.
I'm always doing tests.
We're both hypochondriacs, I think. Yeah.
But it really, my dad died early because he thought he had something and he was too afraid to go to the doctor to find out that he had it. He didn't have it, but it allowed other things to progress. And if he'd gone early, he would have, it's early detection.
Yeah.
It really,
And we're lucky that we can afford to go as often as we do.
It's fucking expensive, and it's ridiculous that it's so expensive. But it's not a denial of death for me, because I've been reading a lot about that lately. I've been close to death many times. A couple of times by my own hand, and other times by bullets whizzing by and shit like that. And I'm afraid for it to be painful, but I'm not actually afraid to be dead.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah.
I don't have a fear of death, but I have a fear of being in pain.
Yeah.
Or being infirm, as they say.
Yeah, and obviously it'd be a shock to hear, you got 6 months to live.
Yeah.
But it would also be, I think there would be an awesome moment in that too. And we've all lost people. I've lost like 5 people this year that have been really close.
A couple of them I knew too.
Yeah, and it kind of brings it closer, And
Have you had a scare that turned out to be nothing ever?
Oh, when I was 13, I was sure I had breast cancer.
Oh, that's right. You told me this.
I had this lump in my breast, and I went to the doctor afterwards, and he said, "No, that's perfectly normal. That's when your sex is choosing, is it a boy or are you a girl? Like that lump would form into breasts if you were a girl, but it's just a little lump when you're a boy."
It's going to be a peck.
What's that?
It's going to be a peck.
Yeah. Yes, we hope. But there was one point, I was in Zoot actually, and I was 21 years old, and I was, for some reason, I was sure I had cancer. I don't know why I thought but I started getting dark circles on my eyes and losing weight, and people going, "You okay? You really don't look well." And I'm playing when we're opening for the Hollies, and in Adelaide, and I got the call that everything was okay. And I was like, I never forget the feeling. It was like, oh my God, I'm gonna live. And I went on stage and I'm banging away, and I broke like 4 strings on my only guitar. It was an amazing feeling, but that's all I remember.
But here's the thing. So I only really had one recently, like during the pandemic. What I figured was COVID, which I avoided for 2 years. But I got sick. When we were on tour together, when I first started to get sick, I had this situation when you and I were on the road together, right before, like months before COVID. We did some shows on the East Coast. And I don't know if you remember this, but I didn't cancel any of the gigs, but I got so sick that I had 104 fever.
Yeah, I remember
like
that.
for days.
The fever, yeah.
And then it just went away. But I had these horrible like convulsions one night in fucking Montclair, New Jersey, where we were playing, and I thought, I'm gonna fucking die in Montclair.
We love Montclair.
We do, of course, but I don't want to die there. And then I came home and got some tests done, and like everything was
and you
fine.
said it went away, right?
So then, like months into COVID, I got it again, and I was convulsing with chills and fever and everything. And my doctor was like, "You've got COVID." And so I got tested over and over, and I didn't have COVID. So then the fever wouldn't go away, and it became a week of a fever, and then 2 weeks with a fever. And now I'm going to a specialist, like an infectious disease expert at Cedars, and they found nothing. And then I go to UCLA to a different expert, and they find nothing. And finally, my doctor.
Just because they find nothing doesn't mean you have nothing.
And my doctor, Rob Heisinger, who is also one of my best friends. He's been my doctor since I was 18.
We love doctors.
We love doctors.
I have several friends.
I mean, he's my pal. We play
great
tennis
doctors,
together.
yeah.
And
I know, it's weird, isn't
he
it?
called me and he said, and now it's just like 3.5 weeks every day with a fever.
Wow.
And he said to me these words: there's no way you don't have lymphoma or some form of cancer. It's the only explanation for this fever. Even though they haven't found it yet, it's got to be. We've got to do a CT scan. We've got to do this. We've got to do a PET scan. We've got to do it. And I'm thinking all this radiation. And I was like, hearing that, I just wanted to get the diagnosis. And we scheduled it. And then the next day, the fever broke and went away. And I said, wait, I'm not doing these tests yet. Let me see if I can go 2 days without a fever. Anyway, it went away. To this day, he said, well, you didn't have cancer because cancer doesn't take a break. And this has been years now. I have no inflammation in my body. We do those same tests.
Just pre-nuvo.
I've been tested for everything. Everything is great. But here's the thing. For weeks,
You thought you were
you, I thought I had cancer. I thought, well, maybe I don't know what this is going to look like. And I remember walking up and down the beach or walking and hiking and just looking across a table at one of my kids or Daisy and just thinking about my mortality in a way I never did before. And then I was like, fine. And it took no time for me to start bitching about the dumbest shit. And the gratitude that I felt for weeks and weeks that I'm not gonna die now dissipated back into regular life so fast that it's kind of like I'm embarrassed about it.
Gratitude is hard to hang on to.
It really is, right?
Yeah, it's you have to really think about it. It's not like, oh, gratitude. It's just on my shoulder all the time. There's too much going on. And
I mean, I'm definitely better than I've ever been about that.
Yeah.
And I think I'm more grateful than I've ever been.
Yeah, me too. I think so. I think I'm very, very grateful a lot of the time. Is where a lot of the kind of depression went away.
I see a difference even in, I feel like there's a difference in the shows we're doing now than even a few years ago. We started doing shows like 4 or 5 years ago, and they were really fun. But I noticed something different in both of us that's just gratitude.
Yeah.
Like even the way, like I remember your face when we were putting this show together, and I said, hey, you can totally just do what you've been doing, but if you want on Human Touch, where you go out into the audience, I'll go with you. And you went, you will? And I went, yeah. And you went, fuck, that'd be awesome. So we have this moment where we both go out into the audience. And to me, that's a really good example of like me going, why wouldn't I want to go do that with him? Because we get to go out and like hug these people who've been hugging us for 2 hours.
I love it too. And I've gotten flu from it, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So don't give me flu.
No.
No kissing.
Oh, wait, before I cheers you and say goodbye. So one of the things I do in this show is I give, thanks buddy.
We have some questions. We have
No,
one answer question.
I give a gift to everyone, a gift of vinyl. Because I'm a vinyl nerd.
78.
It's a 78. This is the first 78 I'm giving anybody. And I was thinking, what could I give him? Now, the first thought, of course, I had was Beatles, because we both are Beatles freaks. But then I thought, he's probably got, because you're a collector. So I thought, I don't want to guess what he might have or might not have. Then I thought Elvis, because we have that in common. But I thought he probably's got a lot of Elvis shit. And then I was looking through stuff that I had. And I've had this since I was a kid. And I want you to have it. And I'm pretty psyched to give it to you. I think you're going to really love this. It's an original.
Oh my God. Seriously?
It's Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock on
the beginning
78.
of white rock and roll. Unbelievable.
You don't have that, right?
What's that?
You don't have that.
No, God, no.
You
I don't
do
have
now.
any 78s. They don't actually make a player that
I don't know
plays
that you
this
can
anymore.
play it, but you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You'll have it.
You know what we used to do? We used to have 78s, and we'd throw them in the air and throw rocks at them.
Oh yeah, because they
broke.
shatter.
Oh,
That will too.
No. The first record we ever owned, my brother bought, was a 78 like this. It was Diana by Paul Anka.
Paul Anka.
Yeah.
Love it.
And this is the single. This is what the single used to look like.
What's the song on the other side?
13 Women.
Yeah.
And only one man in town.
Oh my God. Well, there you go.
Wow.
That's my gift to you.
That's very cool, dude.
Cheers to you. We're gonna go cut some promos because we're on the road all this year.
Yep.
And I love you, my friend.
Love you too.
37 years we've been friends?
How long?
37 years.
37?
I think so. This year.
Cheers. Here's a
Onward.
37 times 37 more.
We could do it. And with our shirts off.
Here's to taking the shirts off in 37 years. Whoa.
That was awesome. Thank you, buddy. That was really fun.
That was awesome. Yeah, that was really great.